Hi everybody, McBeard here. Welcome back to another batch of fresh reviews for Way of the Witcher, brand new expansion coming to GWENT in December, the beginning of December. We'll get that date right. We'll put that in post. Yes. Got 9 cards for you. I wanted to wait until we had at least a nice batch. I think 9 cards is a pretty solid batch. 3 cards on Wednesday, 3 cards on Thursday, 3 cards today on Friday. So, just so you know, these cards definitely reinforce the way I came at it the first time. It's an advanced set. There's a lot happening here. There's a lot of possibilities here. This is the worst fortune cookie ever. The current year will bring you much happiness. It's almost over, and it was probably not very good. I mean, there are some people that probably had a great year. Millionaires, billionaires, trillionaires. And I bet some people that had $900,000, I think they probably could have a good year if they believed in themselves. Lol, lol, lol. So the first card we're going to talk about is the very interesting Coded Weapons. Coded Weapons is a 5 provision tactic that deals 5 damage to an enemy unit. With a death blow, banish it and spawn a copy of it on top of the opponent's deck. So, unlike the other factions that have been getting new faction-specific, tag-specific special cards that do things on death blow, Nilfgaard has gotten a very interesting one. And that is fine because they already have Assassinate. And for the most part, that is that card. The drawback is the way you play it. Assassination is, I think, a perennial underrated removal card because, people will just play onto the Naked Row. But this one does something very special. It banishes the unit that you hit it. It banishes the unit you hit, spawns a copy of it on the opponent's deck. So this has a couple of applications, none of which are obvious, I would say, and none of which are straightforward, but it does give you a couple of interactions that you can build around. Not just a couple, but maybe more than you would think. So the first thing you can do is banish an enemy unit and put it on top of the deck. If it's a unit that they don't care about, you just polluted the top of their deck with a bad card. So you banish, this will allow you to kill an Adarnian Mauler or something like a Dun Banner or something that you don't want to go into the graveyard. I mean, it's weird. It's weird when you copy it anyway. So I feel like banishing is this is the banish part of it is just so they don't get it, that you don't copy the card for them. Like for Scoia'tael, it would be kind of dumb if you killed the card and then they ended up getting another Greatsword on top of their deck. You wouldn't want that. So I think the banish is more so to make sure that you might actually want to play this effect. So when you put a bad card on top, you pollute the draws, but you also can put a good card on top of their deck, perhaps by damaging and banishing, let's say Stefan Skellen. He's at 5 strength. Your opponent plays it. You hit it with Coded Weapons. Now Stefan Skellen is gone from the game, but on top of the opponent's deck. Now when you play Cantarella or Ophiri Merchant or something that does something to the top card of the opponent's deck, you know exactly what that card is. That's some serious setup. And it seems like setup that could be played around, but it is definitely interesting gameplay as far as I'm concerned, because it is offering a Nilfgaardy thing without being one of the annoying Nilfgaard things, like locking or disabling something that you want to use, completely countering some mechanic, banishing something in your deck, hand, graveyard, whatever. It's still doing very strange and mysterious Nilfgaard things. And this is another interesting situation where if you play Cynthia and your opponent plays the golem that they get, the useless golem on top of the deck, you can now have Coded Weapons ready for it to put it back on top of the deck again. Maybe it's just a one of. It is a tactic, so maybe it helps you get there for Enslave. I don't see myself rushing to put this in a deck, though. But it's a thought starter, and I think that a thought starter, for the most part, that's what I want in Gwent. Something where I'm like, how can I use this the best? I think this card does that. I think most of the cards have done it, but not all of the cards have been doing that, I think. What's up, Professor Murdoch? What's up, Cross Controller? Best art of the expansion? Well, when we get through this group, I think I'll go over it. Your year's been good, other than being stuck in the house. Would Nilfgaard card play with your opponent's top card? That would be Cantarella, would be one of those. Ophiri Merchant also steals. That's a neutral card. It's a 5 damage tactic for Enslave, but Assassination was already. It's a niche card. It's an interesting one. Let's move on, though. There's only so much you can say about this card. Here we have Thea Beastie looking very happy to reveal the Griffin Witcher Adept. Now we got a new common card for Northern Realms. Oh, baby. It's a Witcher. It's a Griffin School Witcher, as the Northern Realms are now embracing the Griffin School of Witchery. Griffin Witcher Adept reads, it's a 4 provision card with 4 strength with shield. On order, transform an allied Witcher into a base copy of this card, basically. Griffin Witcher Adept. So this card was another discussion piece, I think, on Twitter. This one I needed some convincing on, because I don't think we've seen a support card out there that makes this card really shine. The argument that I saw was that it can refresh the shield on itself. So if you have 2 of them, or 2 units, you can just keep bouncing the shield back and forth. And yeah, this card can definitely do that, and no other cards can really do that. But Cintron Artificer is kind of like, you know, a unit that gives a shield. And I don't know, like Lady of the Lake, if that was such a strong thing, wouldn't Lady of the Lake be like maybe worth playing? Shields don't, like, the shield effect doesn't need more shields. What really this card would need is a card like Carrick Frigate that makes volunteers that are Witchers. That's what this card would need to really pop off for me. I don't really see a world where I'm playing this right now. But I would say that this card is a promissory note that there's going to be some interesting things happening with copying units in Northern Realms. And we'll have to see. But I think a 4 for 4 is usually good if you need to have the card in for a certain reason. Now, I'm not expecting there to be more scenarios than this, but let's say there was a scenario that needed a Witcher to proc it. Just like with Siege, you'd want to use a card like this to do it. A nice 4 for 4 Witcher that would have some sort of backup plan. But there's not a lot of cards that this would interact with. The Wolf School Witchers, as you know, Lambert, Vesemir, and Eskel all drop down at 2. So the Griffin Witcher Adept, on order, not even on Zeal, but on order, could eventually flip those Witchers and get 2 more points on it. So on a good, now we're talking about, it's +2 and a shield, I guess. But we're talking about a scenario where this card has finally reached 6 points. You know, you can just play a 7.4 provision card. Like, this card needs to have some level of build around, and I just don't really see it yet. But I got my eye on the Griffin Witcher here. It's a good swarm card that goes in hand with Cohen. Yeah, if you can set up your board and boost them all by 1 with Voimir. But it needs to be a Witcher. It can't just transform anything. So you'd have to also have the board state to set it up. So I look at it like a worse Slave Infantry. It's not even on deploy when it does it, and when it does it, it can only do it to a Witcher. Meanwhile, Slave Infantry can work with Germain's Cows, and that doesn't see play. So I just don't think that this card has it, unless it has a support card that I'm really not seeing. But the fact that I don't think it has it is why it excites me, because I surely don't get it. Failed Experiment. This is a gruesome card, but definitely a conversation starter. If you can get past one of the most grotesque and just despair-filled pieces of art you've ever seen, you will get to the root of what is a very strong Syndicate unit, 5 provisions for a 9 strength unit. This is the highest strength unit you have ever seen at the 5 provision slot, and probably will... Nope, that's a lie. Great Swords. Nope, that's a lie again. That's 6 provisions. So yeah, this is the highest provision. This is the highest strength, but there is a catch, of course. There has to be a catch. The Failed Experiment drops down at 9, but at the end of your turn, you'll lose a coin. And if you have no coins, you take 1 damage. But you can poison this card to stop this ability altogether. So for the low price of 1 coin a turn, you can maintain 9 strength on the field. It's also a Salamandra card, which could matter. It does have a couple of cards that matter, but as in Gwent, a lot of the cards that care about tribal, it's loose. It's loose enough. You want to let the points speak for you. But this card is a bomb, right? It drops for 8 if you have no coins, and that is absolutely fine at 5. To drop a reliable 8, potentially a 9 if you don't want to leave coins on the table, you're passing 1 coin left. This is going to be probably a cornerstone piece in Syndicate. I can't imagine this card gets away with not being played or broken in some way, but it is great. 9 strength at 5 provisions. It will just be a huge reach piece when it comes to fighting for round 1. It's kind of a spender. Yes. If this thing is eating your coins, those coins aren't wasted until you poison it. And we've already seen self-poison. Again, a card that begs the question, how wild is this future we are going to see? What's up, 5 Aries? How you doing, man? Begs the question, what kind of future are we going to see? We've already seen a lot of self-poison. Really interesting stuff developing for Syndicate. Really interesting stuff developing for Nilfgaard. And what we've seen from Northern Realms have been some pretty cerebral cards. Not really sure how this one's going to reach its maximum potential, but Cohen for sure is an interesting card. Reverse Shiru. Let's move on to Thursday's reveals. Hey Slama, how you doing? So I said hey Slama, like that's super informal, but your Twitch name starts with Slama, so I said it. I'm so used to doing that. I want to say hi Jason, how are you? Like I grew up next to you, like I'm your high school buddy. Hey Slama, yo. All right. Let's talk about Thursday's reveals. Oh, Slama 2 Hey, Gulo.
The Larks 2 gifted a tier 1 sub to Slama 2 flags. They have given 57 gift subs in the channel.
Gulo, now Jason can use full test, pog test, and of course the Quokka. Warm welcomes to you, Jason. Thanks for stopping by. We're crushing these reviews. We're on. So I was just talking about how cerebral the set is, and how coded weapons and Griffin Witcher really, and even Failed Experiment really kind of ask the question, what kind of future are these cards are we looking at? Because they look, the face value of them are obviously offering something that we can do with now, but it's part of a set that cares about these cards. So I can only imagine that self-poisoning or putting things on top of the deck, I can't wait, like the bizarro world we're going to be taken to here. Actually, Cosmo is the next card we're going to be talking about. People aren't ready for what's coming. We're just getting started. Yeah, there does seem like there's a lighter touch to this card. All right, so Cosmo Malaspina. Oh, Jason, you have to walk in as I'm reviewing this card. This card is absolute memery. This card is 5 points and maybe more. And I really think that for the most part, you can't say too much more about this card. 5 points and maybe more. You could put it in between an Andrega Larva, perhaps, and maybe get some points. You could put it next to a Tutor or Philippa and maybe get some good points. But for the most part, if you like Gascon, you'll like this card. Do you like maybe some points? This card is 5 plus maybe some points. Now, this is Gwent, of course. So points matter, and this card will be playing an amount of points. If you play it in between 2 units, you are probably, in the best situation, getting probably +2 or +3. So maybe you might say this card plays for 11. Maybe. Maybe it's not good enough for 9 provisions, my friends. This card is not going to see any play, but it will get some people big points and some crazy highlights. But I think that Alzur is teaching us that random units on a spawn, situation, they're spicy. Oh, they're spicy, but they're not reliable. And this is even worse because Alzur at least makes it out of nothing. Cosmo is taking a unit and turning it into something else. So those points have to go somewhere. So I just don't think you're going to really get there. It doesn't transform tokens into anything good. It won't transform like Spirit Tip into anything, I don't think. So he's just not looking that good, huh? Is this the controversial card? But what's the controversy? Can people not count? Whatever. That's just me. Let's talk about Catskill Saboteur. Now, this card is dope. This card is promising. This card is making good on a promise that Dryad Matron made to us, I think, in Crimson Curse. So finally, we're seeing. Oh man! And this card and the other Scoia'tael card. Scoia'tael's got some fire in this set. I really love it. Cat Witcher Saboteur. Move an enemy unit to the leftmost position on the row and damage it by 1 for each card it passed. What a cool card. So this card, obviously, it'll hurt Carrick Frigate. It'll hurt whatever a Svalblood Priest is digging into. It'll hurt the Svalblood Priest in itself. It could disturb all sorts of row-based things. It could offset a Prophet and Horde. And you are getting damage for the effect as well. Plus, you are moving a unit. So if you're playing other stuff like the Doblethan Sentry, you are going to get the benefit of the effects of moving that unit. So it might also take one extra damage as well. This card is a very cool unit. It's just like swiping the credit card, refreshing the typewriter. I think it's a really cool card, especially considering we've already seen cards that care about where a unit is on the row, like Brehen, right? It'll be the most acrobatic expansion ever. Things are going to be jumping around all over the place. And believe me, we've already seen a reveal that proves that. So this is pretty great. I think this card is really cool because it also, like I can see how like it works very specifically, kind of like you might run the Vryad Dragoon for the vertical solve. The Cat Witcher Saboteur in some situations will be the horizontal solve. But you're going to have a bunch of other cards that work with this Witcher. It's also important to note that the Witcher is a new category for Scoia'tael, which means that Harmony or Call of Harmony and Harmony effects should be proccing with this. So another thing that that Waters of Broccolon might want to care about. So I think that this card, I mean, whether or not it's competitive, this could just end up being another, what was it? The Symbiosis. The Duncanel Guardian. This could end up being another Duncanel Guardian, a card that the face value looks good, the effect looks clear, but maybe doesn't see play. But again, everything with a Witcher, everything that is a Witcher, will always have that, I don't know, maybe it'll matter more that it's a Witcher. Maybe it'll matter more. But I do like the horizontal move. Yo, Nilfgaard, how you doing? Will there be some new leader Witcher animation that includes acrobatics? A new leader animation, a new leader for Witcher. So we've seen Alzura as kind of the leader for this expansion. So I guess no, but we do have Geralt in the game. Full power, baby. The cartwheel. He's gonna cartwheel in. He's gonna cartwheel in. All right, triangle within a triangle. So pirouette. So triangle with a triangle. Great acronym, just like Curse of Corruption. We love it. Boost an ally by its provision cost or damage an enemy by its provision cost. And it's a 9 provision spell. So this card is pretty close to Becker's Rock Slide or Curse of Corruption in the case that you're probably going to use it to remove something and you probably know what you're going to use it on when the game starts. Becker's Rock Slide, lots of things die at 8. You're happy about it. Triangle with a triangle can kill a lot of engines that are expensive, like Pavko Gale, let's say. Pavko Gale, boosted up to 8. Becker solves it, but so does this. It's more expensive. So you're trying to look at a situation where Becker's Rock Slide, where 8 isn't enough damage. Because at that point, you're paying 8 for 8 with removal. It's a spell as well, so you can't say that spell matters. But this does have the upper end of just doing that much more. So specifically, this would this kill Fion? No, it doesn't kill any of the defenders. It does take care of stuff like Keltalis without a heat wave, but I feel like this is walking the line in between Becker's Rock Slide and Heat Wave as far as you're already teching for stuff, so this seems like just like a more expensive tech. Takes care of the ST defender. It kills Figus outright. Okay. But so does like Gutting Slash, right? Or what is it, Stunning Blow? Is that true, what I just said? I think that this probably is too expensive. But there are enough spells are occupying an interesting space here. If spells and randomness and mages become like a thing where you don't know if you're going to end up seeing a bunch of spells or if you really need to use spells, this spell with Alzur does create a situation where you don't have to be Nilfgaard to use a great 9-point spell. So there's that. If you think that Alzur is a cool card and you're using it, I think it's a cool card and I've tried it and we're going to try it some more. But I think we're going to be trying it with mobilization. But I think that ultimately it's probably a little too expensive to see play. And I'd have to see a very specific card that this countered before I believed it would see play. Kills half SY Defender. Covenant. Oh yeah, the token. It wouldn't do anything to a token. Viper Witcher Adept. Now, we have checked with Mole Legion in that I loaded up Twitter and saw this tweet. Viper Witcher is 3 power. Even if you see it on the reveal page as 4, It's 3 power. So Viper Witch Adept is a new engine for Nilfgaard at 4 provisions. It's 3 strength, and at the end of your turn, if you have less cards than your opponent in your deck, this boosts itself by 1. But that's not what the text says. The text says boost self by 1 if your opponent has more cards in the deck than you. So that means if you have used anything that draws you a card and also does not put a card back into your deck, so no Vicovaro Novice, you would have to use something like Marching Orders. So let's say you use Marching Orders, let's say you use Menno, you've tutored, your opponent hasn't yet. Now you drop this card, and it's immediately a 4-point engine that's ticking for 4. You have a harder time doing this on turn 1. So it doesn't work as well as a Magni. It doesn't ramp faster than a Magni, and that's why I think it's not better than a Magni. I think that it's pretty fair. I think if there's going to be Witcher archetypes, this is a pretty fair and pretty strong 4-point engine that's going to be about as good as a Magni, if not better, because it starts at 4, but you have to play it earlier. You're also putting cards into your opponent's deck, and that's the other way. You make sure you have more cards or less cards than your opponent. So there's lots of ways that this can work. It's a pretty unassuming engine, but I think it's a really good common card when we're looking at something that cares about what Nilfgaard's trying to do. And, I mean, you guys know me. I'm not a huge fan of Mill. I've never been that much of a huge fan of Mill, but I feel like the approach here is really thinking about how it can make it interesting. And it's not just Mill. It's also your own hyper-thinning and your deck clogging of your opponent. So it's a lot of Nilfgaardy stuff. And this is that kind of like, this is the annoying Nilfgaard thing you're going to get. You're going to have to deal with maybe a little bit of Mill, a little bit of your mulligans aren't as good anymore. Your draws aren't as good anymore. I prefer this much better than like messing with my mulligans or messing with my leader in general. But I think that this is going to be pretty cool. I think it's going to be pretty cool. Happy Friday. Yo, Lefty, how you doing? Is Portal big reason why this went to 3 power? Yeah, you could Portal this out. Nilfgaard Portal, I think that's the future and the present. Asira Portal is going to be the new double ball, but you have to mulligan properly. But this is like not a bad accompaniment. I do like Infiltrator as well, but like if you have a bunch of 4-point cards in your deck that care about Portal and you have Asira, you don't even have to worry about your draws that much. I found that more often than not, you can just fix your hand and get them out. So I think Portal is something that Nilfgaard is not exploring enough of, but I could be wrong. Get ready for this one. All right, inside story. Shinmiri really wanted to make sure he knew how to pronounce this one. This is the Fuka. Now, this card has, first of all, one of the most beautiful / terrible arts, right? This guy is ripping this dude's face off. This premium art is going to make me gag. But the Fuka is an interesting take on a Thrive unit. It's 5 provisions for a 4 strength, 1 armor, veiled Thrive unit. Units played by your opponent trigger this unit's Thrive ability. It doesn't say only units played by your opponent. So I think that you also trigger this unit's Thrive ability. But I think in either case, it doesn't necessarily make this card better or worse. In the most part, I think that this card is probably the best thing to look at is Sly Seductress, a card that reacts to what your opponent does. And this thing is probably not going to get boosted higher than 6, even if your opponent has no way to stop it. And for that reason, I think it plays a little bit under. I think it plays a little bit under the points you'd want for 5. I don't know if this could be 4, not with the Veil and not with the armor, but you're paying for that with the 5. The effect itself, I mean, you might be able to trigger it yourself. The wording suggests that you can. It doesn't say also, and it doesn't say only. Jason, are you in? Are you in the chat still for this one? I'd like to actually get a clarification on this one. So does it thrive do you thrive it and your opponent thrives it, or is it only your opponent? Mm-hmm. So the fact that you both can thrive it makes it a bit more promising. It means that this is going to feel like if you play this early and your opponent might play suboptimally or they might not. But let's say this is like playing a 5 for 5 that thrives or a 6 for 5 that thrives. 6 for 5 that thrives with 1 armor, that's almost an Indragal Aura. I'm just kidding, guys. What I'm saying is that this is probably going to be it's going to be about as good as Sly Seductress, but you as the Monsters player will be able to take it to new heights. Your opponent can do some early work for you. Also, it's a Thrive that you play that you kind of... I mean, your opponent is probably just going to play around it. I don't think this sees play, really. It's going to have to... Like, we're going to need more Ogroid synergy because we don't have a lot of that. We do have Bridge Troll and Necker, of course. And Necker Warrior. Sheetroll of Vergen. Cyclops. So we have cards, but if we have something that cares about Ogroids, yeah, we might want to stack an Ogroid deck. Ogroids used to be something that that decks used to care about way back in beta. It wasn't strong or popular, but it was still a keyword that had text around it. So, again, what are the promises that Monsters are making for us? Because this is the first Monsters card we're seeing. Is that right? Is this the first one that was released? Cat Witcher. Oh, man. You think this card would be not great if you couldn't proc it? Yeah. It's the first one. Monsters, I have the most excitement here. Okay, so Cat Witcher. This card is hype. Has Flake talked about this card yet? Come on, y'all. It's the old Archaspore. 5 provisions for a 4-strength Witcher. At the end of your turn, move self to the other row and then damage a random enemy on the opposite row by 1. Adrenaline 4, damage it by 2 instead. These guys, you know, they're going to start hopping around, right? They're going to start hopping around. And then that dynamic music's going to change and they're going to start hopping around, man. I'm just saying that it's like an engine that just gets better and better. It's an engine that gets better and better. It's going to be fun to play it. This card has the heart and soul of Gwent. This is one of the coolest cards that's been released. And you might say, McBeard, sometimes your opinions are weird. Because sometimes I think my opinions are weird. Because when I see a card that comes back into the game, sometimes I don't get so hyped up about it. I'm like, okay, it's just Archaspore, but it's finally back. And like we see things that come back after such a long time. And I'm trying to think of another example of that came in the last expansion. But it was like Svalblood Priest. Okay, the Great Swords are back, or whatever. Although Svalblood Priest, I loved when Svalblood Priest came back, and I still love that card. Anyway, what I'm saying is this card is, there's none of those feelings for this one. But the thing is, the curveball, the plot twist, it's a Scoia card. It's a Scoia card. So, but it's so great. It's a movement card. It moves every turn. It's going to be so bonkers with... It's going to be so bonkers with it's going to boost every turn with the Dolbothen Sentry, right? Why isn't it called Cat School Witcher instead of Cat Witcher? Well, indeed. Yeah, so with the Dolbothen Sentry on here, this thing starts to boost already. But its thing is, the Sentry itself isn't the engine. This is an engine. Engines upon engines upon engines. This card is strong. It's going to be really, really good. And that's all of the cards that we saw since Wednesday, I believe. We haven't seen any others. Unless, Jason, you want to drop a little... No, of course not. Don't take reviews away from other people. Yeah, 3 power. Canonically a cat. Yeah, he's a cat. He's a Witcher who's also a cat, guys. That's what it is. But sometimes you find little secrets and little cool bits of lore if you go into the pre-order page and you take a look at the cards that have been released. So favorite card so far, favorite card art so far. I'll be real. The Cat School Witcher is also great art. Like, this is such a great Witcher piece of art. I love the Cat School Witcher.